Today, all news Simply the Best. Get involved.
Simply the Best brings to you Carly Church, a human trafficking crisis intervention counselor with Victim Services of the Durham Ontario Region. As a survivor herself, she helps other victims of domestic sex trafficking and helps those who are currently suffering and trapped in the same situation she once was.
When I had exited my trafficking situation, the first thing people asked me was kind of, and it wasn't in a malicious way, but the first thing they really asked me was, well, why didn't you just leave? Because when you are being trafficked, you lose your voice and you lose control and you don't get to make choices.
At this very moment, people and children here are being sexually exploited, abused, trapped, and they need your help.
I've fully dedicated my life to bringing awareness to human trafficking and to letting people know that this isn't that, dark, deep secret that you need to hide, that there's help and there's hope and people care.
Get people to come and talk to in your schools about what human trafficking is. Talk about the true definition of consent. We were taught wrong growing up. You need to let people know that consent has certain elements that have to be present. It must be clear, it must be coherent, it must be willing, and it must be ongoing.
In your presentations, you had listed 3 reasons why it isn't as simple as just leaving for victims trapped in domestic sex trafficking. Could you explain how the dangers and fears of escaping their situations look like, the physical force, psychological imprisonment that keeps them confined, and share with us those 3 reasons behind those holds?
Yeah, I always like having this conversation because I know even in my own experience, when I had exited my trafficking situation, the first thing people asked me was kind of, and it wasn't in a malicious way, but the first thing they really asked me was, well, why didn't you just leave? If you weren't tied up, if you weren't locked in a room, if your traffickers were not there 24/7, why didn't you walk out? Why didn't you call somebody? Why didn't you go to the front desk and say, I need help? And there's 3 main reasons why I didn't. And I think after working with young people for quite a few years now in the exact same situation as me, these are the 3 reasons why it's not as simple as asking somebody to walk out that door. So the first reason I didn't leave, and I think this is the most obvious reason, is the fear. I was afraid of them. There was some physical violence in my situation, and all I could think is if I walk out of this hotel room and they catch me, what are they gonna do to me? That fear was real. The second reason I didn't leave was the fear of the unknown. If I walk out this door, where am I gonna go? Where am I gonna get my next meal? Where am I gonna sleep tonight? Where am I gonna get my next fix? And who is ever gonna love me again after this? Who is ever gonna take care of me? That was way scarier than they were. But the final reason, the third reason, and the strongest reason I did not walk out that door was the psychological hold that they had on me. That trauma bond that they developed. They got to know me in a way that nobody took the time to get to know me. They asked me the questions that I had been hoping and dreaming somebody would ask me from the time I was a little girl. They treated me better than anybody had treated me in a very long time. They were compassionate and transparent and non-judgmental. And then things shifted, and things didn't come free anymore. And it was very confusing. And then I'd do something for them and it would go back to that. So that trauma bond, they worked hard to build that trauma bond or that psychological hold. It's really hard to just tell you in words what that trauma bond really feels like. So the best way I explain it is I always tell my own personal story. And after working with young people for a long time, everybody has one of these stories. They all look different. But when I listen to them, I'm like, that's where that trauma bond was. You can see where the trafficker found that one thing. And that's where it really held them in that psychological hold. So my story actually took place after I took my very first trip. After he left, my pimp came in the room and he sat down on the bed beside me and he looked at me in the eyes, and it was so genuine. Every time I tell this story, I in fact can still picture that moment like it was yesterday. And for a very split second, when I picture it, it still feels just as genuine. Logically today, I know it wasn't, but that's how strong it was in the moment. He sat there on the bed beside me and he looked at me in the eyes and he said, Carly, I am so proud of you. And he said it because I told him way back in the luring stage that the only thing I had ever wanted to hear growing up is that somebody was proud of me, that I was good at something. And now he said it. It didn't matter anymore who said it or who was proud of me. I wanted to hear it over and over and over again. He, not only was he meeting every single one of my basic needs, he now just met a need that I had been longing for my entire life. Was I really willing to walk out that door not knowing if I would ever get that again? Absolutely not. He found my crack. Everybody's is different, but he found mine and he filled it, and I would have done whatever he asked me to do.
As a part of your work for victim services, you have teamed up alongside Durham Regional Police Human Trafficking Unit to further aid and give support to victims of human trafficking and sex trafficking. You meet through investigations and stings. How can victims escape their situations, and what resources can you share that victims always have available to them?
I love talking about this because I got out in this way, and now I actually have gotten to do a whole 180 in my life, and now I get to help other individuals who were in the exact same situation that I was, and I've gotten to, like you said, team up with Durham Regional Police here, who are great, and they've really opened up to being very victim or client centered. That's the approach they take. Their main focus is making sure that the person behind that door who's possibly being trafficked, that their safety and that their security and that their basic needs are being met. They put that first before their main priority isn't just catching a bad guy. So what's really cool about it is I get to go with them every time they go to meet somebody. I'm not a police officer, so they go in, they clear the room, and then they offer to whoever's behind that door if they want to speak to somebody confidentially who's actually once been in their shoes and who now has access to resources and supports that could help them if they would like to. And I'd say 99% of the time they say yes, they want to meet me. So the police actually leave the room. I go in. I do my little spiel. I give them my background as well, because I think that's important to know that I'm not just somebody walking in there pretending to know something. That once I was sitting in the exact same spot that they were. And pretty much what is then done is I offer any support that they need. They do not have to talk to police. They do not have to give a statement. And anything they say to me, I cannot tell the police. It's completely confidential. And I offer to support them in any way they need. So if they need, support, if they wanted to leave, I would help them find a place that day. If they're not ready to leave, that's fine. I'll still work with them. If that's just they want to have a conversation with me once in a while. Sometimes working in the sex trade or in a trafficking situation is a very lonely place. So oftentimes they'll take my phone number and just randomly will text me or call me. I will help them meet any basic need. It's almost a way where if they want to, they can have a different option, because it feels like there's no way out. So I'm kind of somebody who they can talk to. I'll build a relationship with them. If they haven't eaten, I can provide them with meals. If they need a break, I can provide them with safe accommodation. I can help them get any of their basic needs met. If they have any substance use issues, I can help them get into a private treatment center. So this is access to funding that I have through our program. And this is provincial, so it's in Ontario. And we work collaboratively with all the other agencies within our region to ensure that we can meet every single basic need. So in every region I know across Ontario, and I believe across our country, there are programs that are specific to human trafficking. And what's cool about it is when we get together in a region or a community and we really work together, because not one agency can support somebody all by themselves or meet every single basic need. So the really cool thing that we've been able to do is really partner with every single agency that can support different things, whether that's financial support, housing support, treatment centers. We've really partnered together to give people that wraparound service, so that if they do choose to leave, every single one of their basic needs will be met. So they do not need to depend on their trafficker if they choose to leave. The other cool thing about it is there's no pressure. If somebody is not ready to leave, I am not in the business of saving and rescuing. What I'm doing is I'm letting people make their own decision, and an informed decision, and I will support them whatever their decision is. Because when you are being trafficked, you lose your voice. and you lose control and you don't get to make choices. So some people I work with and instantly they want to leave that day, and we do everything we can, and other people I've worked with for sometimes a year before they're ready to leave. Sometimes I'm still working with people who aren't ready to leave, but I still work with them. So there's not a one size fit all. I cater my interventions and my supports to what that individual needs. Because what are my goals might not be their goals, and it's not fair for me to impose my goals on somebody else. So I listen to every single person I work with for what it is that they want. And then sometimes that changes over time. So then I adapt and I change, and I walk beside them. I don't tell them what they need to do.
Absolutely amazing. Wow. You have a lot of one-on-one conversations with other women currently trapped in the same situation you had once found yourself in. If there is someone out there watching who might have already found themselves trapped in sex trafficking, what would you tell them?
I always say I want them to know that there's hope. I want them to know that, if this isn't what you want to do, there are people out there who care, and there are people out there that will do everything in their power to do what they can to help them. I want people to know that they are more resilient than they think. And that what they've been through will not define them forever. Even though I'm a survivor myself, the survivors that I work with have changed me, and they teach me something every day. And I think the skills that individuals have when they exit a trafficking situation are things that some people in an entire lifetime don't get. And I think if anybody's watching and you're involved in something like this, I want you to know that you are more powerful than you know, and you have the strength that a lot of people will never get in their life. But mostly I want them to know that there's hope, and that if they have a goal, they can obtain it. I always say when I do trainings and stuff, I always say to people, like, if you meet somebody who's being trafficked, sometimes we can be combative, and sometimes we can get angry, and sometimes we can be difficult to work with, but they all have the ability to be sitting here talking to you right now. I truly believe that every survivor has that ability to reach whatever goal it is that they have for themselves, because I was once sitting there in their shoes, and now I'm sitting here talking to everybody about this.
The rate of human trafficking in this country has doubled over the years, increasing the endangerment of 12 to 14-year-olds who are said to be the average age of entry into the sex trade in Canada.
As much as human trafficking has been around forever, I really think it has just really come to the forefront in Canada. People are now talking about it. We are now opening our eyes to the fact that this is something that is an issue in Canada, and that it is one of the fastest growing crimes in Canada. And I think over the last several years, I think Canada has responded, and I think we are doing a lot. Do I think we can do more? Obviously. I think that right now there's different provincial strategies. I know Ontario, we just launched our provincial strategy not too long ago, really. I think it was about 4 years ago now. Not every province in Ontario has a strategy to end human trafficking. So I think that's one thing that Canada can be doing more, is I think every province needs to have a strategy to end human trafficking. I think, of course, funding always is something that needs to go into anything. And I think I'm a big believer that we need to work from both a proactive and an enforcement side. So I think that in Canada, we need to put our resources together to effectively reach both. So if we are just putting resources into the prosecution and the resources to support somebody in exiting a trafficking situation, we're forgetting about educating and giving socioeconomic opportunities and teaching the next generation about human trafficking and providing them with opportunities so they don't feel as if either they need to victimize somebody to survive, or that they're going to end up being a victim in order for somebody to meet their basic needs. So I truly believe what we need to do more of is be working collaboratively on both ends. Because you can arrest 1,000 traffickers, you can arrest 1,000 Johns, you can put 1,000 survivors through a program to help themselves. But then if we're not looking at the next generation and providing them with the adequate socioeconomic opportunities, boosting their self-esteem, boosting their self-worth, teaching them about consent, teaching them about healthy relationships, teaching them how to treat one another, then there's going to be another 1,000 pimps, another 1,000 Johns, and another 1,000 victims. So it's very important, I think, that that's something that we need to do.
You've mentioned in previous presentations and interviews on other platforms that you disagree with how consent is currently being taught. What is your definition of consent that you'd like to be taught and discussed with kids in school?
So the true definition of consent isn't yes means yes and no means no. There's certain elements that need to be present in order for consent to exist, or consent to be valid. So consent needs to be clear. Both parties need to know exactly what they're consenting to. It can't be changed halfway through. It has to be a clear yes, not an I don't know, I think about it, or a no answer at all. It has to be a yes. So it needs to be clear, it needs to be coherent, it needs to be made not under pressure, and it needs to be ongoing. And I was never taught that. There's so many cool resources now where it really explains for young people to really get that definition of consent. It wasn't until I learned the true definition of consent, and it wasn't until after I exited my trafficking situation that I learned the true definition of consent. Until I actually understood consent, I thought it was my fault. I thought I said yes, because my traffickers literally said, you know, you can either dance or you can escort, and I chose escorting. I thought I chose it. Those were my only two options. I couldn't have said no to both. So it was really it was a whole game changer the moment I found out that I actually didn't consent to it. I lived with a lot of shame and self-blame previous to that, thinking that I did this. It was my fault and I don't deserve help. So I always say, like, in order to really stop somebody from being trafficked or to never be a victim of trafficking is teach them the true definition of consent and empower young people. Somebody who is empowered cannot be trafficked, or it is incredibly difficult to be trafficked. So if you can equip people with the true definition of consent and empower them, a trafficker will not be able to take them through the stages of commercial exploitation.
Absolutely agreed. You've mentioned in a previous interview that at least one kid after your presentations disclosed with you that they were being preyed on and experienced similar warning signs to that of which you provided in your presentations. In addition to discussions of consent, what shifts would you like to see in the education system to better equip kids with knowledge and awareness of domestic sex trafficking in hopes to further prevent children from falling victim to these situations?
We also need to actually talk about human trafficking. It is happening. I have never been to a school where somebody did not come up to me after and said, this is happening to me, I think this is happening to me, or I know somebody that this is happening to. So our young people, they already know about human trafficking. They're just not getting the information or the knowledge appropriate. They don't understand exactly what it looks like. So we actually teamed up with our school board here in Durham Region, and we are in every single grade 9 classroom, and we teach that young people about not only that consent and healthy relationship, but we actually talk about human trafficking. I walk them through the stages of commercial exploitation. I'll tell them my story. We talk about warning signs. I truly believe that every school should learn about human trafficking, should learn about consent, should learn about healthy relationships, should learn about vulnerabilities. Those are things that are incredibly important for us to learn. And I think at times we might need to teach young people about it younger than grade 9. Because if I'm going to grade 9 classes and they already know about it, or they know that it's happening to people, or it's in fact happening to them, what if we could have talked to them in grade 8 before they got to high school? Would that have equipped them with the tools to identify red flags before it was too late?
Upon researching the amazing work you've been doing to shine light on this topic, I came across footage from another platform's interview where you had initially spoken up about your experience as a survivor of sex trafficking, but as a blurred figure. What restricted you from letting yourself be shown, and what changes took place that allowed your transition into speaking out publicly in your full image?
I battled with that for a while. Like, I remember when I first did that interview, I really wanted to not blur my face. But there was a part of me that was still, I was scared, like I wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure if I wanted to just be seen as a survivor of human trafficking. It wasn't so much for fear of my traffickers finding me. Obviously that played a part in it. But the big part was at that point I was still filled with a bit of shame, I think, and I was still filled with what will people think of me. And I was still worried about, will this define me? Will I, is this something that will follow me forever? And then I remember just thinking to myself that this is something that I want to do. I want to let people know that this is not something that is shameful, that this is not your fault, and that just because something happened to you that might be seen as bad, I actually now view my trafficking situation as a positive in my life. It sounds crazy to say that, but I get to use my experience of something that was traumatic and negative, and it was quite horrific in my life. I now get to flip that negativity into a positive. And if I can tell my story and show my face and say, this is who I am, and I'm okay with who I am, and I'm okay with what happened, and that my story can now in fact empower somebody else or help somebody else, so that either this doesn't happen to them, or they actually feel comfortable coming forward saying, I need help, or this happened to me once, or I went through that too. And for me, that's taken a load off of, it's a weight off my shoulders. To not feel as if I'm dragging this really negative thing in my life. It's actually a positive thing today. I've fully dedicated my life to bringing awareness to human trafficking, and to letting people know that this isn't that, dark, deep secret that you need to hide, that there's help and there's hope and people care.
What organizations do we have here in Canada to better help the healing of survivors of human trafficking, and how can we support them?
Find out in your communities or in your province what services are specific to human trafficking, and to really do your research because there's so many different kinds. So if somebody is currently working in is being trafficked or working in the sex trade, and they might not be at a place where they're completely ready to walk out that door, there's certain resources that will really help keep them safe.
Sex trafficking is an issue that needs the attention and action of many more people, but unfortunately it can often be a topic that a lot of people initially feel uncomfortable bringing up and talking about. How would you best recommend people begin to discuss these issues with loved ones and opening up these much needed conversations with others? And what would you say to those hesitant to bring up these discussions with other people they know?
So I talk about it all the time, because I think it's incredibly important to talk about. I bring it up in a very probably open way. I don't think it's like I said earlier, it's nothing to be shameful about. Human trafficking happens, and it's not the person who's being trafficked's fault. As soon as we start to talk about it, we can take some power away from that. We can also remove that stigma. So I think it's our jobs. I can't talk to everybody about human trafficking. I'm never going to reach everybody. So whoever's watching this, it's now I'm passing the torch for you to now have these conversations with your groups of people, whether that's your family, whether that's a community group, whatever that is, to start to talk about this. Because once we talk about it, we're going to be able to remove that stigma. We remove that stigma, and people are going to feel more comfortable asking for help. People are being trafficked in every community and every city across our country, are affected by human trafficking. I grew up in a tiny little town in northeastern Ontario with a population of 1,200, and I was trafficked. So it is happening everywhere. And if we do not talk about it, it is going to continue to happen right under the nose of everybody. if we don't talk about it, it's just going to continue to happen, and it's going to continue to skyrocket. It's already the fastest growing crime, so it's just going to get, we have to have these conversations.
Empower our youth. Give them more socioeconomic opportunities. In fact, boost their self-esteem and boost their self-worth. If I can leave you with one thing today, it's that if a young person is empowered, it is incredibly difficult to traffic them. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here on the show with us, Carly, and for taking the time to share with us such valuable information. From being your own success story to helping and empowering others currently trapped in similar situations themselves, we appreciate the work you do every day for others. Thank you, Carly. On allyglobal.org, you can donate, support their short film, The 12,000, or even host a fundraiser of your own. Please keep learning, keep taking action, and share this information with others. There are many resources out there and organizations to support. Both human trafficking victims and survivors need you to help in any way you can. Thanks for watching and for getting involved. We'll see you in the next show.